Welcome to the Scratch Golfer's Mindset Podcast, the show committed to helping you dismantle the destructive mindset programs keeping you stuck in the proverbial bunker of poor performance so you can get out of your own way and play to your potential. My name is Paul Salter. I'm a high-performance hypnotherapist and mindset coach with 16 years of experience helping thousands of individuals like you get unstuck. This podcast features a collection of solo episodes, conversations with scratch and plus handicap golfers, and master classes with top experts in the performance psychology space. The one goal? To help you make playing to your potential a habit. Buckle up. Your appointment with the confidence doctor is about to begin. In today's episode, I sit down with renowned sports psychologist, Dr. Bob Winters, affectionately known as the confidence doctor, to explore how true confidence is built, sustained, and reclaimed after setbacks. And I felt like a kid in a candy store during this episode, soaking up every bit of wisdom Dr. Bob shared, hanging on his every word. And one of the things I found incredibly validating was just hearing from him, someone with literally 50 years in the niche industry of building confidence, helping athletes build an indestructible amount of confidence and to access it on demand, validate some of my teaching and approaches, really helping you, the listener, further understand that a lack of confidence is learned. There might have been a moment in your life, or perhaps a series of moments, where you lost your confidence and you learned that it was safer to be timid, apprehensive, and doubtful of your abilities. And this is perhaps one of, if not the most common obstacles I help my clients overcome, transforming their mindset from one that is filled with doubt, hesitation, and uncertainty, a lack of belief, and upgrading the collection of beliefs and behaviors to be an environment of an abundance of confidence. And whether that's confidence you need standing over a putt, off the tee box, in your relationships, or growing your business, or thriving in the office, confidence is something you deserve. If you're sick and tired of struggling with a lack of confidence, I invite you to schedule a mindset coaching discovery call with me to learn more about how I use hypnosis and 16 years of experience helping high performers build confidence that lasts. And without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Dr. Bob Winters, the confidence doctor. Dr. Bob Winters, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm fine, Paul. Great to be on your program.
Yeah, I am thrilled you're here. We're going to have a phenomenal conversation, and I would love to kick us off here. You're known as the confidence doctor, and we're going to talk all things confidence. But I'm curious, in your own personal journey, was there a pivotal moment where you recognized you were dealing with a lack of confidence, and that's ultimately what guided you into the pursuit of becoming an expert on all things confidence and mental toughness?
No, I wouldn't say it was ever a lack of confidence, Paul. I would say from a very early age, I was very, I think the word some people say cocky or cocksure or maybe arrogant or whatever. But I was really, really small. And I participated in a lot of sports in school. In fact, when I graduated from high school, I tell the story over and over. I think I was the smallest kid in my senior class. I was about 4'10", about 86 pounds. Wow. But I had, I think, something like 13 varsity letters. I had played a little bit of baseball, but basketball, cross country, swimming, diving, golf, and a little bit of tennis. So I was really, had good eye-hand motor, skills. And, but I had this, I was the youngest of three other kids. I had two older brothers and an older sister. And my mother and father were fantastic people, very nurturing, supportive, but tough-minded people. And they always said, you are what you think you are. And if you, really think, big things, go out and make, a large noise. And my mother used to tell me many years ago, she goes, dynamite comes in small packages. So this whole notion about, building confidence was really sort of, implanted in me, by my environment, by my, and that's not my DNA, but my environment. And I think that's really, where we actually, gain a lot of our confidence, through our parents, our peers. And then after a while, we have to take a look around and go, I think I can do this, because everybody asks you the question and they look at you and they go, oh, do you think you're better than me? Especially, on the playground, you go up to little kids and if you talk about confidence, on the playground with little kids growing up, and that's really sort of where I first learned, who was really good, who was king of the hill, who was the very best, who was the fastest, is that if one of your friends, and we always pick up sides, and we had a whole bunch of kids live in my neighborhood, and we would play sports all day. I mean, we weren't like, I guess kids today, I don't want, stereotype them, but we were always outside playing games all the time, very, very active. And you knew intuitively right away that you were pretty good because you were either one of the first kids picked. That meant that, hey, you were pretty good and they wanted to have a good player in your team, or that the captain was your best friend and they wanted you on that team. But I always took a look at this and I said, what if, it was like a little chubby Charlie and he was the last one picked, and they go, all right, get your butt over here. We'll talk, we'll have Charlie on the team. But it was funny how Charlie would come through with a big play, a big hit, a pass reception, a touchdown. How Charlie would walk off the field, he goes, yeah, I'm the man, I did it, everything. He's really strutting around. And that's really how confidence is sort of created. It's that you just can't say, be confident. You have to be able to do something. You have to have some modicum of success. And I think that's really, where we started. I mean, I digress from your basic question, but the point of it is, I don't think confidence is something that you say, hey, I need. I mean, everybody talks about the importance of confidence, but it impacts everything you do, from your social life, your athletic life, your business life, and you see it. And it's an invisible, ethereal quality, but you see it. When someone walks into the room, that they have sort of that chutzpah, they have that pizzazz, they have that aura about them. And, a lot of people call that, confidence. It's just a swagger. And I think that's really, something that I've sort of looked at. I have studied now for over 50 years. And I have some real, strong feelings about how to build it, what it is, and what it is not. Because there's a lot of false, what I call bogus definitions of confidence that are out there. So, we can kind of get to that. But I think that's really where it started. It started in me just realizing, hey, I had some, special skills I could do. And most people who fail, Paul, at things usually have sort of a pity party syndrome, or, I'm a victim syndrome. They go, why me? Why me? And for me, with all of my students, clients, and people, corporations, and people I work with, business people, I'm always of, the thought process of why not? Why not me? And that's what you find is that, people who go on to become successful, they look around, they go, well, everybody else is successful, and I think I'm just every bit as good as them if we take a look at this comparison, factor. And then they finally go, well, why not me? And then they decide for themselves, I'm going to do for me, instead of just looking around, wishing, hoping, I'm going to go out there and, make my own path. And I think that's really where competence creates confidence.
Yes.
And, and that's really where you have some failings, but you pick yourself up. You have some grit, you have some perseverance and determination, and then you have some success. And then you do it all over again. And after a while, you become a master at your craft. And that's kind of how you become confident.
Yeah, really well said. So let's get a working definition, because this is so timely, Dr. Bob. I'm working on this with one of my clients right now. He's updating his relationship and definition between confidence and arrogance. So I would love to hear from you. How do you define confidence? Let's also define arrogance. And you alluded to another great point, this false confidence or bravado. How do we define and differentiate the three?
Well, confidence, I mean, there's so many different levels of confidence. When we talk about a global, definition of confidence, it's just a belief, that you can do something or that you can achieve something. That's sort of a global definition of confidence. And a lot of people sort of have this very superficial, shallow confidence. Yeah, I believe I can do something. In fact, most of us take off into any endeavor saying, yes, I can be confident, until they realize, well, I wasn't as confident as that. I thought I could handle that experience a lot better. And they realize it takes a lot more skill, whether it's motor skill or cognitive skill. But confidence, and I've taken a look at this for a long time, and I've written a new book that's, hopefully soon to be published. And it's all about, developing confidence. And I talk about confidence is this multi-dimensional phenomenon that encompasses a myriad of positive experiences, almost like a cornucopia of positive experiences that suggests that one can and one will do something, in a specific situation that will produce a successful outcome. And it's highly based on one's faith and one's innate and developed abilities. Now, that's just part of the definition. The other part is confidence is also the mental and emotional strength to resist the negative influences of doubt, worry, and anxiety, and still push through to actually, attain a positive outcome. And really, when you say someone is confident, is that they will execute, their plan to produce, a desired outcome. That, to me, is true, enduring confidence. Now, when you talk about arrogance, now arrogance is, a feeling of, I can do this, and it's very ego inflated. Arrogance is really also based on insecurity and inferiority, and it's almost as if you have to have this huff and puff bravado, and that, when we start talking about a lot of trash talking, that's really where the arrogance comes from. But when you have a healthy arrogance, is that you know what you know, and that you don't have to actually go out and tell people, I'm this, I'm that. So years ago, I think the great, runner, Edwin Moses, hurdler, he was talking about how he had won something like 435 straight hurdling, races. And they asked him, going into the Olympics, do you feel that you can win? And he goes, well, absolutely. I wouldn't be here, going, running for America, for the USA, if I wasn't, 100% sure. And the way he said it, one of the reporters in the room said, well, I just heard, Mr. Moses talk about, how fast he was, and he was this and he was that. He just came off so brag, so cocky, and so arrogant. And I'm just not really supporting him at all. And I'm sort of sitting here as a sports psychologist going, how do you not become unbelievably super confident if you've won over 450 races? I mean, it's just impossible. And what are you supposed to think? Are you supposed to go in there and be super, head down and go, boy, I hope I'm good enough, to win? But this is the whole point. Our whole society, Western society, especially America, we have a real problem with people who are, appear confident, because people go, oh, you think you're better than me? You think you're better than me? And it isn't that, people think that they're better. We always talk about this whole notion about being equal. My whole program is helping people not be equal, to set yourself apart, to be based on your merit, So when we go out and we go play in competition, especially in a sport such as the game of golf, which, I've played for years and worked with a lot of players all over the world, is that everyone starts off at the first tee with zero. Everyone is even. Everyone is equal. But your task is to separate yourself from everyone else. And you do that by playing your own game, beating the course, not worrying about what anybody else is doing, and playing one shot at a time. Now, when you do that, you are in your own little world, and you're in your own little focused, what we call flow state. And that, is really just, I take care of my business. This is what I do. And so when you do that, you do separate yourself from everyone else. because everyone that we talk with, Paul, is playing the wrong game in life and in everything else. They play a game called let's follow the follower. And for me, I'm trying to get my people to go the other way. Because, if everybody's going this way, it might be like a herd of sheep. And so I'm trying to help people understand, it's okay if you want to be that obstinate little sheep, the little black sheep that goes the other way and everybody's going this way. Because if you're going this way, you're probably thinking for yourself and you're probably going to end up right where you want to go.
It's really interesting you say that, because a lot of my work revolves around the word safety, and safety in the context, subconscious safety. Coming back to our conversation, is it safe to stand out? Especially if they've grown up in an environment with their elders, their entertainment, and their peer groups kind of diminishing, downplaying, standing out for having too much success, too much love, too much money. So I'm curious to get your opinion. I'm right on board with you. Standing out is actually the place to go. But can we reach a point where we're conditioned to constantly dim our light? And can we turn it back on?
I used to have a golf coach, God bless his soul, who, would see me and I would, be very excitable. I was a very emotional player, because, in golf, you don't want to get too high, don't get too low. But I was always kind of a fiery, emotional momentum type player. Yeah, and I would really show it. And he'd always be on the sidelines and he'd always be going, okay, just calm, tone it down a little bit. And again, this is me just being who I am. Mm-hmm. And it's not because I'm trying to brim, with confidence, being the confidence doctor, but it's just knowing that it's okay to feel good about your successes. It's really good to feel good about, your talent. But I know so many of my young students who are absolutely brilliant, who really do play down their cognitive and intellectual abilities because people go, oh, you think you're this, or you think you're that, and whatever. And so I'm sitting here going, wow, it's tough, when you have to tone down the light, the aura that you present to the world. I mean, that's what, outstanding means. It means you stand out with your brilliance, with your illumination, with your mastery. And, a lot of people have a hard time with that. And I think, if you're always looking around for others' approval, you'll always be searching, because really, at the end of the day, the one person that you really need to be falling in love with and really approving is yourself. And that's why I always say when we, go out to go play, if I'm talking about, Team Paul, I mean, who are the three most important people on your team that you can absolutely believe in day out? It's me, myself, and I. And everybody else is just, we don't care about anybody else. It doesn't mean that we're antisocial. It doesn't mean that we're so egotistical, but we are wrapped up in our own little zone of control, because all I can control is what I can control, because all that I can do, especially if we're talking about being on the golf course, all I can do is all I can do. But that should be more than enough if I'm really, taking the time to assess, analyze, and evaluate the situation, to play my game, and to do the very best I possibly can. And I think we just saw that this past week over at the Valspar Championship with one Victor Hovland. I mean, here he is. He said, the interview in raw, brutal honesty, saying, hey, I didn't play that well. I didn't play that well at all. It's surprising I'm even here, that I won. He goes, but I did what I had to do. I stayed in my lane. I played my game. I played with a lot of grit. And my God, that's really the key to success in any walk of life. I mean, we talk about golf lessons, but these are all life lessons that you can use in every area. So, yeah, that's just a part of it.
Yeah, well said. So then I'm curious. So what amount, if any, of confidence are we born with? And then I'd love to get to, how do we begin cultivating, strengthening, and grabbing more of it?
I don't think, we're really born with any DNA link that says, hey, this is the confidence DNA. This is your, type strain. And people talk about confidence, where it could be, a trait a state level of confidence, trait, mostly a stable level of confidence. The main thing for me is that there's probably a million different styles and personalities that all possess high levels of confidence. For me, you can see people who are very, very almost shy, sort of, soft-spoken. But when they get in their realm of influence, they're extremely confident. And one of those people is the great Annika Sorenstam. I'm very fortunate to call her more than acquaintance, a nice friend. I've known her for many, many years. And she comes off very reserved, almost to the point where she could just blend in. She's almost vanilla. But when you put her in the competitive arena, I mean, now we know what we know. And see, for me, that's really what a confident athlete does. Because the most important thing that I hear, and the most, overstated comment I hear, and you probably hear it a lot too in your practice, an athlete comes in and says, Dr. Winters, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I know it. I'm just not doing what it is that I know. And I'm looking at them, I'm going, well, if you knew what you were doing so well, and you knew this is what you needed to be doing in order to play great, why aren't you doing it? And they go, I don't know. That's why I'm here talking to you. And that's where it could be a blind spot. It could be something holding them back. It could be an unawareness. It could be something that they're suppressing that, we could actually bring out, through our self-talk, our hypnosis sessions, really unblocking ourselves. And so that's why I think it's so fascinating with what you are doing. And, I did it for a long time, many, many years ago, but still do it, to some degree today with visualization, mental imagery, a lot of guided self-talk, affirmations, things like that. All sort of, almost even the NLP, structure,
Yep.
all of that. So it's all this sub-vocalization, sub-thought, subconscious. And if you think about it, I mean, by the time that, we are 2 or 3 years old, I mean, this is just a thing, what people ask, are we born with confidence? I don't know if we're born with confidence, but we are sure inundated with negativity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by the time, we're 2 or 3, as a young toddler, we hear no, I mean, at least 400 times a day. It's been, reported by the child psychologist, that I've spoken with, is that, no, don't touch that. No, put that down. No. And a lot of times this no is meant to sort of protect us, to keep us safe, right? And, so one of the things that, I'm always trying to help my athletes know now as they become older, junior, college, elite players, is, we're not wired for positivity. We are wired to protect, and protect the organism. But that's why it's so much easier to be negative. And negative thoughts, negative feelings are 100 times more powerful than any positive or optimistic feelings, because to be optimistic, it's not natural. To be a little fearful, to be stressful, to be on high alert, but that protects the organism. So I just tell them, don't be sitting there going, I've got to be positive. Just understand you've got a lot of negative thoughts. Let the negative thoughts go and sort of bring yourself back and center and go, okay, what is it that I want to do? What is it that I want to do? And a lot of people don't even realize how negative they become. In fact, and one of the tools I do for a lot of my young players, who get really angry, get very reactionary, I always give them like some type of like a rock, a little sharp rock to put in their pocket for every negative outburst or negative shot, and it's not that I'm trying to quench the fire and take the fire out of the belly, but for them to have something that's just, it's not normal, it's abnormal to actually react violently or, in horror or being so overreactive. So now they have like a whole lot of rocks in their pocket and they're walking around and these rocks are kind of sharp and they're going, Dr. Winters, this rock's kind of cutting into me, kind of hurts a little bit. And I said, that's exactly really what these negative thoughts and negative self-talk is doing to you. It's holding you down. It's weighing you down. It's cutting into you. I said, that's really, the rocks are a pretty good physical metaphor for really what your own self-talk and your negative thoughts are doing to you. So that's just some of the stuff, the simple stuff I do, Paul, with some of our players.
But I love that you shared that, because first and foremost, and you know this better than I do, there's so much power in simplicity. And oftentimes we get lost looking for the most complex, challenging solution when the simple answer is right there in front of our faces.
Well, that's what I've always said, the KISS formula, the KISS acronym. People think keep it simple, stupid, but I don't work with stupid people. I mean, they come see me, they must have some element of intelligence, So I always talk about keep it simple and specific. And, I wish, I could coin that, but a great friend of mine, sports psychologist, who is not with us any longer, Dan Gould, came from University of North Carolina. He said that years ago. Keep it simple and specific. And I love that, because what I've done, I've taken that and say we have simple thoughts, but specific targets, specific goals. But that's the whole notion. Simple, keeping things simple doesn't mean dumbing it down. And I remember one of the Skunk Works, one of their head engineers, was always talking about, he's the guy that actually created keep it simple, stupid. And then I think Dan, took off of that. But, the Skunk Works would have, the Blackbird and have all the different, Project 52, and, Area 52 and have all that. But he was talking about the SR-51 or whatever it is, the Blackbird, the world's fastest spy plane. He said, when this thing goes down someplace in the world, we need to have our engineers, our flight technicians, be able to go in there and clean up that plane or put it back together. So it doesn't need to be overly complex where it has to be here out in the desert here in Arizona, wherever we're at. We can actually be in the Middle East someplace, or we can be in Norway when it goes down, and that we can actually put it back together. So that whole notion about keeping it simple, keeping it specific, I think was really well founded.
Well said. So let's pivot our discussion. We've made a mistake. We're stuck in whether you want to use the slump word, a pattern of poor performance. So we've made a critical error in what we deem to be a pressure-filled moment that mattered so much to us. Most people, and you know this from your work, that's why you've done what you've done for so long, struggle mightily to bounce back from a critical error or a slump. What tangible skills can we share with our listeners to help them bounce back, dial up the level of the confidence they're experiencing once more?
Well, I really, I'm a sports psychologist, an applied sports psychologist. I like to think of myself as a sports scientist because, I have degrees that all focus around motor learning, sports vision, counseling. I'm so much more than just a mental performance coach. But the first thing is, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I don't want to have to go back in time and, what happened to your mother, what happened to your father, any of that. I want to know, where are you at right now? Where do you want to go? So we don't have to, reinvent, the wheel anymore. But the big thing is, I'm asking them, okay, do you want to waller? Do you want to have a pity party? You want to just keep talking about this slump, how bad it is, and, it's so terrible. I said, because the moment that you change your mind about this slump and you move forward and say, I'm not in a slump anymore. I'm moving this way. And that's really one of my trademarks. That's one of the trademarks of my business, of the Confidence Doctor. Change your mind, you change your game. And that's been trademarked. And as long as with my name as well, and a couple of other things as well. Because the moment you change your mind about the things you're thinking about, the things that you're thinking about and the things that you're doing start to change as well. So we're moving forward. And so I hear a lot of people say, well, guys, just fake it till you make it. Just fake it till you make it. Act as if. I'm always telling them, I go, boy, I hate that. I hate those words because it really, one thing you don't want to do as a human being is give yourself deception, is to lie to yourself. Because when you look in the mirror, you just sit there and go, oh yeah, you faked them out today. That's really why, so many of us have the imposter syndrome, because we're saying, oh, boy, I hope they don't find out, who I am because I'm not that good, right? So I always talk to people about almost like Nike. You just do it, but you do it until you become it. And the more times you do something, the more times that you're going to actually feel comfortable doing it. Now, you may fail miserably at first, but when you hear the great, great athletes, the best athletes in the world, and even the best business people, I mean, they talk about failing. Don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
Now, no one likes to fail, but are you learning anything?
Correct.
And that's where, Dr. Carol Dweck, created the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. Oh, I'm never going to get it better. I never, never, never. The growth mindset says, okay, had a setback, but what can I learn? And what can I move forward? So we always talk about failing forward, moving forward with our failings. I think that's, a John Maxwell, book, Failing Forward. But there's been some great authors, great researchers talk about this. But that's the whole point, is that, when we talk about making a mistake, is it really a mistake? I always, write down on the board, MISSTAKE. And I'll say, everyone makes mistakes. And my students, whether I'm doing, a class or, a team or whatever, they'll go, Dr. Winters, you made a mistake. And I'll look up there on the whiteboard and I'll sit there and I'll say, hold on. So I'll go right in between the last S and the T. And I said, this is miss and take. I said, you need to take this for a miss. I missed it. It's no big deal. It's just a miss. And that's what we need to do. We need to really just take that miss, dismiss it, let it go, and move forward. And that's really how, we do it. And one of the greatest movies in life, that I think has been great, a sports psychology movie, was, Disney's The Lion King. Because the little Simba, who exiles himself from the kingdom because he thinks he was responsible for his father's death, goes across the elephant graveyard, in which he wasn't supposed to go, right? And he cries himself to sleep at night, and then he hears music and laughter and hears Timon and Pumbaa coming in, and the meerkat and the warthog, and they're asking why, the little guy, why are you crying? He tells them, and he looks at them, he goes, well, why are you guys so happy? What are you guys so optimistic about? And they said, well, we live by, the philosophy of Hakuna Matata. No worries. We put the past behind us. And I remember watching that, Paul, years ago with my boys on something that we used to call a VCR, which dates me a little bit. And I remember watching it, and I said, hold on here. This is really good stuff. And my boys, were 8 and 6 at the time, Blake and Jared, and they go, come on, Dad, But I said, no, let me rewind this. I kept rewinding it back and forth. And for the viewers who don't know what VCR is, and it's a video cassette recording. We used to put it in. You had to rewind it and go back. And and that's sort of something that kind of dates me, kind of like a Blockbuster video store that most people don't realize. But the point of it was the Hakuna Matata is a great metaphor for, hey, listen, okay, what has happened? It's spilt milk. Put it behind you. Move forward. Let's keep moving forward. And that's the whole point about living your life. Are you living in the moment, a fully present, fully flow state? I'm engaged in the moment life, moving forward. And are you moving forward, living the life of your dreams? And are you living it boldly, confidently, peacefully? Some people, go, hey, I don't want to be bold and confident. I just want to have peace and harmony. Well, that's fantastic too, because you can live a very warm, comfortable, and confident life, and you don't have to do great stuff. Main thing, at the end of the day, you sit there and go, I've had a great day. I can't wait for tomorrow. That to me is really what being successful and having a confident mind is all about.
Incredible. So something you said multiple times, this pattern of moving forward. And then you said too, you need to change your mind to change your game, change your golf game. Something I've always been a big advocate for. I want to give Tony Robbins credit for this quote, but I'm not sure if it's him, so don't quote me on that. But change your physiology to change your psychology. I'm curious, what relationship does physical fitness, conditioning, exercise have on confidence?
Everything. everything. People feel better about themselves, when they're getting healthier, when they're getting, firmer, when they're getting toner, when they're getting flatter. And even when they're, even it might even be, a little bit, what we call a little chubba lubba. I mean, you've got a little bit, of Rubenesque, a little bit of flesh going around, but, you feel good. You feel better about yourself. And the research is very, very deep in all of this. I mean, it's the one thing that really comes through loud and clear in sports science is that, the more fit you are, the healthier your brain physiology, your neuropsychology patterns, your neural patterns are strengthened. It's just so many, different things. So, the other part of it is, you are what you think. You are what you eat. You are what you don't eat. And I mean, I think it's all intertwined, and it's having a nice, healthy balance. That those people who, when we start talking about the physiology, is that when you see people on the golf course, and you are the golf, hypnotherapist, but when you see a golfer who's had a poor shot, the first thing they do, their physiology, the head drops, and it's like, oh my God. And what happens now is that the arousal reaction sets in. The sympathetic nervous system kicks in, the cortisol kicks in, the adrenaline kicks in. And so now they're feeling bad. Now they start wallowing, and they start, oh gosh. Then they start counting and projecting. And so the point I'm trying to, really make, I'll look at my students, I'll go, hey, head up, or snap the rubber band or whatever. They'll see me in the sideline and come on, get up. Because the moment that you change your physiology, and Tony was exactly right. He knew this years ago, as most of us who've been in this field for a long time. We know that, if you walk, talk, and act like a champion, all right, pretty soon, you start to have, some positive feelings about yourself. But if you walk with your head down, and the great Jackie Burke, from Texas, he used to tell, his players, he said, boys, he goes, in the jungle, he goes, and he say boys and girls, he said, folks, if you walk in the jungle and you're an animal and you got your head down, you're going to get eaten. And I've always loved that, story. And that's so true. And that's why we always keep our head up. And that's why if you think about all of the great, really great performers, whether it was Chris Evert, who was known as Miss Iron Bridges, who was taught by her father to never show them, disgust or any, like you're getting inside your head, that you really are just stoic. And that's why she was called, Miss Iron Maiden, had ice, Miss Iron Pants, that she was just really, really tough. And she would just keep coming at you, keep coming at you, keep coming at you, and just, wearing you down. I mean, the Kobe Bryants, the Black Mambas, the Michael Jordans, the Larry Birds. All of them. Magic Johnson. It goes up and down, the Tom Brady's or whoever it is that they all have sort of this moxie, this feeling like, you know what? I play to win, but I sure as hell refuse to lose. And that's the mentality that I'm actually trying to increase with all of my students. That we play to win. We play to play great. And some days, we get it, and some days we don't. But the one thing that we do not do, we don't refuse to apathy or complacency or I just don't have it today. That's BS. And I think that's the greatest lesson, we just learned. Again, I'll go back to Victor. Victor was talking about that. He goes, here it was. I wasn't even playing. I haven't won in a long time. And, who would have thought, now, who would have had a crystal ball? And that's just it. That's why we compete. We don't know who's going to win. We don't have a crystal ball. We're not Nostradamus out here. So let's go out. And I love what Lee Trevino said. He said, hey, somebody's got to win this damn thing. Might as well be me. And so when you put that, thought in your head right at the very start, you're ready to go.
I'll tell you what, never in a million years would I have predicted Nostradamus, Hakuna Matata, and to quote you, Chubba Lubba in a single conversation with you. I'm going to have to get you on the correct spelling of that after. But
the Chubba Lubba came from, the Survivor series years ago on TV. And, one of the, sort of final people on the island And this is when, in the early days, like I think the first or second season, when they dumped them off an island, and they didn't really feed them very much, and they didn't, really have any access really in body. And so, what one of the players was talking about, and I've always loved it ever since then, is that she was talking about. She goes, "Those of us who are doing better here on the island had a little bit of chubba lubba on us before we came, because those who came really taught the tawny, scrawny lions, who were really fit. I mean, their body was atrophying. I mean, it was eating itself, and they were really becoming very weak. And as you know, as a great, sports dietitian, I mean, yeah, that's exactly what happened. The body was actually, because of all this fasting, and they weren't eating, the body was kind of eating up on its own, fat reserves. But, the chubba lubba. And so I've always talked about the chubba lubba being not just body, but I always talked about the rough, and the fairways. I go, wow, we got some chubba lubba out here. This is pretty deep out here at the Bay Hill Invitational. So, yeah, so that's where I came from.
That's hysterical. I'm so glad you shared that. Talk to us about, when I think confidence, I kind of have a couple of things in my mind, and obviously you're going to educate and drop some additional wisdom here. But first thing that comes to me, to have confidence, there needs to be an element of commitment that precedes that. Do you agree? Or maybe the better question is, what role does commitment to a goal, to success, have in bolstering confidence?
I think it has everything to do with it. But the first thing, when you start talking about, confidence, really, if you think confidence and trust being the top of the pyramid, what you really have to have, sort of the idea of, what is it, really that I want? Where is it that I want to go? And a lot of people don't really know where the end goal is, but they are like the Energizer bunny. Boom, 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 boom. I'm on my way. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way. And they kind of figure it out as they go, but they know they want something more, and that's why people change when they come into therapy, because usually they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's when they are really adapting and adaptable to change. So I think you have to have, that awareness. But first and foremost, to build any type of confidence, you have to have competence. I mean, competence is the physical and mastery and mental mastery of any skill or process that you're trying to actually, create. I mean, when, develop, into a great math student, whether you're algebra, geometry, calculus, and you just don't become competent in a week, 2 weeks. I mean, it takes semesters, years of growth and development. So it's an ongoing process. So really, confidence for me is really the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy. You get out of it what you put into it. So the commitment, and that goes with grit and persistence, perseverance, and grit, who was really from University of Pennsylvania, Angela Duckworth, and all her great, work about grit. And I've always loved grit because I've talked about grit for years. But she's done so much, work and research in that area, talking about it's just not patience. It isn't just perseverance. It's having this lifelong commitment to getting to where you want to go. And we don't know who's going to get there, and we don't know when. But that's why people always ask me, who makes it to the LPGA? Who makes it to the PGA Tour? Who makes it to D1 college golf? And I always tell them this, is that the people who usually end up on the tour or end up, at D1 schools or end up being successful in whatever program they're at are the ones that believe that they belong there. It isn't just having the talent and the requisite skills. It's having the discipline and the determination and the chutzpah and the grit and just, that persistence to endure. And I've always loved, it was the greatest salesman's secret, Og Mandingo. He said, you persist until you succeed. So that's really when we hear great performers. They just, may not be the most talented, but they're going to get it done. They're just going to keep, on grinding. And, you see so many players, in every sport, but especially golf. that you think, wow, they're not the biggest, they're not the best, but boy, they're solid. And they have this tenacity. And so when people go, well, he's pretty confident, he's pretty confident in his abilities because he has trained himself or herself to, be committed and have, the self-discipline. And that's the whole point. I mean, everybody talks about winning and the importance of winning. But I think it was like, the great, legendary coach from Indiana, Bobby Knight, says, hey, everybody wants to win, but not everyone wants to prepare, and practice in order to win. And that's a real big difference. I mean, everyone, wants to be a game player, but as, we've heard, some of the greatest athletes, I mean, the Wayne Gretzky's, the Jerry Jones, and they're always talking about it isn't just what you do on the athletic field when it's game day. It's what you're doing, in bed at night, thinking about it, visualizing it, anticipating it, and going through all these scenarios in your mind, and having this mental imagery. And that's really where, sort of the hypnosis, the self-hypnosis tapes and the self-affirmations over and over, and the loops, and creating mastery images. And while we talk about mastery imagery, we also have coping imagery. I mean, even seeing ourselves maybe failing, but also bouncing back, creating
1,000%.
psychological hardiness. So there's just a lot of different things, that the great athletes do. And almost even the very best athletes at your club or people you work with, they do things different, than a lot of other people do, which makes them abnormal. Everybody wants to be, everybody wants to be average. And I think that's the whole point, is that I just don't want people to be, if you want to be average, you want to be mediocre, then good. Follow the crowd, because you will definitely be on the highway to mediocrity. But if you want to be great, you've got to go on that road less traveled. And that road, we talked about it earlier. I mean, it's a tough road. I mean, you sacrifice a lot, you give up a lot, but in the end, again, you still have to look yourself in the mirror and go, I did it my way, and by golly, I'm glad I did.
So tell me this thing, because I know there are many listeners who are aspiring to win their club championships this year. Maybe they're aspiring to get to scratch or cross into the single-digit handicap area. They're going to hear this. They're going to understand more than ever before what confidence is, how to begin cultivating it. But they're still going to go hit a couple thousand balls this week. And they're going to do so over and over. I'm curious because I'm fortunate enough to have a variety of top golf instructors and experts like yourself in the field of sports psychology. What would you say to someone who still feels they need to hit thousands of balls every week to make that leap they seek?
That's a great question.
You got a big smile on your face.
Well,
So
it's the question. It's almost like runners, when they actually go out and they talk about, I've got to go out and run. I've got to go out and run. And they might run 25, 30 miles a day. And maybe 15 to 20 of those miles are what, we know physiologically are what we call junk miles. They're just miles. I mean, they really don't do anything for the physiology, per se, as to getting them ready, but they feel as if they have to do it, because they don't do it, they feel like they're giving something up. It comes back to a great story of a friend of mine years ago, and we met each other when we were very young at the Stratton Arnold Palmer Golf Academy. He was 14, I was 17. His name's Gary Hallberg. He was the first team All-American all 4 years at Wake Forest, played for the Demon Deacons, went on to have a great, professional career, Champions Tour career. But he went out on tour, and he went up to Jack Nicklaus his first day, and he said, Jack, he goes, you're one of my heroes. I just need to ask you, what's the secret to being, one of the very best players out here? And Jack looked at him, he said, Gary, he goes, I know who you are. Your reputation precedes this introduction. He goes, but I got to tell you, you're going to hit thousands of really terrible, ugly shots. And Gary looked at him and goes, wow, the Golden Bear is telling me I'm going to be terrible, right? And he goes, well, hold on. He goes, you're also going to hit tens of thousands of great shots that most people wouldn't even, don't even have any idea how good they are. He goes, so you have to kind of temper the really good with the bad. He said, we always think that the bad shot, oh my God, I can't believe, can I live with that? And I think he went on to tell Gary that one of his greatest fears was going to the first tee, whether it's at Augusta or wherever, US Open, and topping it off the tee. And it was, just, that was him. He revealed, he goes, that's my greatest fear. He goes, that's why I put in so much preparation before I went to the first tee, because I had to wanted to make sure I was really ready to go. And what interesting side note is that one of my first professional events, I was playing in the Casa Grande Open outside Tempe, Arizona, on the NGA circuit. This was a long time ago, 1978. And I was playing with some pretty heavy hitters back then. And it's like really one of my first professional tournament. Had my good friend on the bag caddying for me, and I was playing a golf ball, that Wilson staff gave to him. It was a pro staff ball. And I actually stepped up and I topped my drive. I mean, we were the dew sweepers. We were like, 7:30 in the morning, so not very many people were there. There were about 15 people that went, ooh. And I turned around and I looked at, my caddy. He was named Mac. And I said, that golf ball just doesn't travel very far at all, does it? And we both kind of laughed. Everybody laughed about it. I handed him the club. I walked up. I took a 4-wood, hit the 4-wood down this hole. This hole was about 440 yards. That was a long time ago. That was a huge hole. I took another 4-wood, got about 50 yards from the hole, hit like a sandwich up there 5 feet, and made 5. And that's how I started, I think, the second round of my first professional tournament. I think I went on to shoot like a 72, 73. Not bad. But the point of it was, it was just something, the very worst thing that happened. And then, how I handled it, I don't know if I was embarrassed or I used laughter, to actually sort of soothe, the pain. But then after I got into it, hey, what's the worst that can happen? And sometimes, we always, ask, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And I always ask my athletes, like, well, what if? What if the worst happens? Do we have a contingency plan? Do we have options? So, I mean, because you are psychologically, emotionally naked out there. You're going to make mistakes, but you have to be able to, again, to put it behind you and go, I can handle this. Those 4 words are probably 4 of the most powerful in the English language. I can, meaning I'm able to, handle this, whatever this is. And so when I say I can handle this, I can deal with it. It's when, golfers and people would get all upset, have a lot of anxiety, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, and they start having this pity party and they have this negative anxiety spiral, and they're lost. And that's the difference between being, if you want to win your club championship, you want to, win your flight, you have to do 2 things. You have to, 1, win the attitude championship, long before you step on that first tee. You got to say to yourself, no matter what happens, I'm going to have the best attitude out here all day of anybody I play with. Really, that's the first thing. And the second thing is, I'm going to win the competitor award. I'm going to win this. I mean, I'm going to win this. I'm going to be the best competitor in the world. And it was funny because a gentleman, had told me this face to face years ago, Jim Flick, who was really a close friend and teacher of Jack Nicklaus. And he said, these 2 things, Bobby, are going to be 2 of the most important things I tell you. So I give, his memory, the very best. And that's the whole point is, Paul, when you spend so much time in the world of golf as I do, and you talk to some of the very best people in the world, and I've been very fortunate, very blessed to be with the David Ledbetters, the Rick Smiths, the Bob Rotellas, and the list goes on, and Sean Hogan, and some fantastic instructors. And you hear all these different, pieces of information. But what matters most to each, person listening to or watching this, on YouTube, is that when you find something, a little nugget here, ooh, that makes sense to me. And you hang on to that and you give that little golden nugget power, that's when you've found something. And that's really what happens. This game, we're always adapting, always assessing, and it's sort of like Tom Watson said, you never really own your game. You kind of rent it for a little while. And when you rent it, boy, you're really playing well. And then something goes askew, and then you kind of try to find something. But, I think the really great players, the really consistently great players, have a great mindset. They have a great diet. They have great balance. They have a great understanding of really what's important. And I think that, putting things in perspective is really, what makes, a true champion golfer.
Well said. And I'm curious, because I could ask you questions all day long, all night, but I want to be respectful of your time. For the listener who's truly resonating with what you're sharing, what's the one action step you recommend they prioritize to strengthen their mindset, to bolster their confidence day in and day out?
This is the one thing I've said for a long time, and I've written so many, wonderful books on this, but it's the book, I want to mention here. It's called Mistake-Free Golf. And people can get it at Barnes & Noble and Amazon, whatever, mistake-free. And I look at the 9 most common mistakes, and I say, these are the strategies, these are the interventions. And this book, it's different than any other book out there. And the reason why I say that, Paul, is that every other book talks about the importance of trust, the importance of confidence. You need to train it, trust it, all of that. This book's looking at the 9 most common mental and emotional mistakes people make. So if I'm going to give people, some sort of, Harry Potter magic wand where they can, flash and they can actually poof, it would be this. In order to create confidence, you create confidence behind the ball. Making a clear and purposeful decision, having clarity. This is what I'm going to do. Now, when you have a do this mindset, you now are saying, I'm going to be committed to this shot.
Yes.
I'm going to commit. And commitment is a pledge. It's a promise. It says, this is what I'm going to do now. So when we talk about commitment in the golf shot, you're committing to your plan. You're committing to how you want to hit this shot. You're committing to your target. You're committing to the feel that you want to have, that you've actually made in your rehearsal swing. But most important, you're committing to the idea of, yes, this is what I'm going to do. So when you commit, you are 100%. You are all in. You can't be a little bit committed. It's like trust. You can't just, it's not like some diet drink where it's 2%, 3%. It's either all or nothing, right? So when you step in and hit the shot, you've got to be absolutely committed. Now that's the first part. The second part, and this is, sort of, the bumper, the bonus, reward here for listening so far, is that say you're, step into the shot and you have a little bit of doubt, you were so committed, but when you step in, I'm not sure. What's the one thing you need to do? The worst thing you could do, and the second, most mental mistake there is, players go ahead, they know they're not ready, they're uncomfortable, but they go ahead and hit it anyway. I'll just get out of the way, I'll just hit it anyway. And the anyway shot goes anywhere. What you have to do is have the self-awareness and the confidence to go, I'm not ready, stop. Snap a rubber band, get behind, reset, recommit, then step in. The single greatest thing to give you confidence at the end of the day, say, you know what? I stepped in to hit every shot and I was prepared and I gave myself a green light every time I stepped into the shot. And I stepped off the ball 3 times today. I did not hit one shot until I was absolutely 100% golden. This is what I want to do. And that right there, when you give players, that type of control and they take, ownership of that, now we're talking about real golfing power. That's what I would tell them.
This has been an absolute pleasure. Where can our listeners go to connect with you, learn more from you? What social media platform do you recommend they go to connect with you?
They can go to my website, and it's theconfidencedoctor.com. Okay. doctors all, the Confidence Doctor, all, written out, .com. Or you can go to davidledbetter.com. I'm with, the Ledbetter organization. Or you can go to Dr. Bob Winters or Robert Winters on Instagram or Facebook. Or if you can't find me there, just Google my name, Dr. Bob Winters, and you will find a whole litany of different things you can see. You'll be able to get a hold of me. So been around for a long, long time, and I love what I do, as hopefully you can tell. And it's just been great, being here on the Scratch Golfer's Mindset podcast. It's been great to be with you, Paul.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. An absolute pleasure. I look forward. We're going to have to do it again because the listeners need you. I've learned a tremendous amount. And for those of you listening, thank you for tuning into another episode. I know you found immense value in this conversation. So not only am I going to task you with listening to it at least 2 more times to really begin to download all of the wisdom Dr. Bob shared, but share it with a friend, a fellow golfer who would find immense value in listening to what he has shared with us today. And with that said, if you haven't done so already, it takes 30 seconds to leave a genuine rating, review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to today's episode. Thank you again for listening. Have a fantastic week ahead. Hit them straight, and I'll catch you in the next episode.